Natural light is great and I use it whenever I can, but as a professional, sometimes you show up at a shoot and you don't get the right light. Like today, it's dark and overcast, and so this room is dark. And maybe I was counting on getting the sun streaming or something else. So everybody who's serious about photography, especially portrait photography, needs to learn to control the light, even if you're gonna mostly shoot natural light, just so you can break it out in emergencies, just in case you have something scheduled and you have full sun, or you have a really dark and thunderstormy kind of day, or if you wanna shoot something at night and still control the light. So I'm just gonna quickly go over the very basics of a 3-light shoot so you can see just how easy it is. I am using Godox strobes here because they are definitely the best value. They're battery powered, so I can just pick them up and carry them anywhere and not worry about running cables across the floor. This is not a review of the Godox lights. We are not sponsored, but we do have a review. You can check it out. And we also have a tutorial that you can check out. So for now, I'm just gonna kind of show you how to control it. Let's take a walk around and I will show you the 3 lights that I have. This is my main light, the key light. It's the only foreground light. This is a beauty dish. You can see underneath it, it's just a specially shaped light which kind of bounces the light forward, and it's got a little mirror in the middle there that bounces the light out so it comes out nice and evenly. This is a diffuser or a sock. It softens the light a little bit. It's totally optional. If I take it off, the light is brighter and harder, but maybe not that flattering. It depends. If you have a professional makeup person and the model is wearing kind of thick makeup, and they have perfect skin, then take that off. The hard light will be really flattering, but usually the diffuser on there is a little more flattering for humans. Let's take a look at the next light. This is my second light. It's my hair light, or you could use it as a kicker light. It's just behind the model, shining a little bit of light on her. By the way, you don't need multiple lights. Usually one light will do just fine, but it's nice to have multiple lights when you need it. If I take this light modifier off, you'll see that it's a snoot. It just focuses light down to a small point that prevents light from spilling everywhere. If you really want to control the light, it's good. I also have a red gel on the end. Wouldn't normally light somebody's hair up with red, but for the sake of this demonstration, I want to make sure that you can see the light that's coming from the hair light and separate it out from the light that's coming from the other flashes. So I'm kind of using it to create a cool effect. By the way, I have Post-it notes on my lights that tell me if it's A, B, or C lights, because I need to be able to adjust the power independently, and I always forget which is which. So it makes it easy for you to know which lights are which. This is my room light. I'm literally just bouncing it off the ceiling, and it's going to kind of evenly illuminate the entire room. These barn doors allowed me to shape the light a little bit, so I could put this up and stop some of the light from going over here to hit the model. So I'll do that and just let the rest of the light bounce around. I love having a sort of wireless light that I can trigger from my camera for a variety of different situations, because you never know what the room light is going to be. Wedding photographers use this a lot. Often receptions and events are very dimly lit, just with overhead incandescent lights or whatever. So you can just stick one of these in the corner of a room, or even a couple of them around the room, and wherever you go to shoot around the room, they will flash and just fill up the entire room and give you like perfect light and the exposure that you want, and allow you to focus on the lighting and the foreground. Let's take some pictures. First, a shot without any of the lights, just to show you what I'm working with here. As you can see, the backlight is way too bright and the model's face is in shadow, and the lighting itself is just very flat because it's all just light that's been bounced around the room. So let's turn on the first strobe. I always don't try to jump in with all your strobes going at once. Just work through it one by one, add layers, and don't add more lights than you really need. So let's turn that light on. I'm also gonna switch my camera to fully manual mode. The ISO is going to be the base ISO. So on that camera, this is ISO 100. Why is it the base ISO? Because you'll get the best image quality out of that, and you're controlling the light, so you can flood the room with as much light as you need. For the shutter speed, I'm going to pick a shutter speed that's enough to freeze the action of the model. And if the ambient light is just straight up bad and I don't want it, then I would use a high shutter speed, like even 1/2000th, whatever I needed to make the ambient light completely disappear. But for the most part, I like a little bit of ambient light in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and just work with 1/125th. If it's a little kid running around or sports or something, you might need to use like 1/250th, or if you just don't have enough light, you could go down to even 1/30th for portraiture, but it kind of depends on your hand-holding ability and how fast the subject is moving. So ISO 100, 1/125th. I'm gonna set my aperture to whatever I need for the proper amount of depth of field. If I want the background to be really blurred, I'll use the lowest possible f-stop number. If I want the background kind of in focus, I'll use a higher f-stop number. If you're in a studio with a backdrop, then you can use a high f-stop number to get the model's entire face in focus. But for the sake of this, let's just settle on a moderate f-stop of f4. So we'll turn the strobe on here, and let me just estimate the power output, take a test picture. Okay, so as I'm looking at that, her face is a little bright given the f-stop. I could fix that in a couple of different ways. I could raise the f-stop number, and that would definitely make it darker. So I'll go from f4 to f8, go up 2 stops here, take another picture. Adjusting the f-stop changes the brightness of the ambient light in the room and the brightness of your flashes. The same applies for the ISO. ISO affects both the ambient light and the flashes. But here's the weird thing. If you adjust the shutter speed, it affects the ambient light in the room, but not the power of the strobes. So let's take a test shot at 1/30th of a second in f4. You can see the brightness on the model's face here. Let's raise the shutter speed up 2 stops all the way to 1/120th of a second. And you can see the light behind the model changed, but the light on her face stayed exactly the same. It's a little mind-blowing, right? It's different than everything you learned about exposure. But the fact of the matter is the strobe is firing at the same amount of output no matter what your flash duration is, typically, unless the flash has a weird little quirk about it. So I can use the shutter speed to change the balance of the ambient light in the room and the actual strobe. So as I'm looking at this, the light on the model's face is still a little too bright. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that down all the way to, what's that, 1/128th now. That's 7 stops below its full output. Okay, so now I like the light on her face. For me, finding the right amount of light output is always a matter of trial and error. There are people who go out there with light meters and they have all these formulas and they measure distances and stuff, but I find that takes way longer, and I just like to kind of get the feel for it. So this is what I'll do. I work one light at a time. I have this first light set up. I like the way it's hitting her face. I like the shadow under her nose and under her chin. Now I can go ahead and introduce a second light, the hair light. So I'll turn that light on, and I'm actually going to turn my main light off. I like to work with the lights one-on-one until I decide to mix them in. So I'm turning the main light off, and now I only have the hair light going. I'll take another test shot, and I don't really see any effect from the hair light there. That snoot kills a lot of the light. Different light modifiers absorb different amounts of light, and that little snoot that you saw is absorbing almost all the light. So I'm going to really need to crank this up. Let's go up to 1/4 of a full power. Okay, there you go. And that you can see the red light from the flash coming through. So I know I'm going to get a little bit of red highlight in there. Now that I'm happy with that, I'll go back to the main light and turn that back on and take another test shot that balances those two. Bang. So now we have good foreground light, and that kicker light is working too. It's a weird effect, but it's an example, right? But the room behind her is really dark, and that's kind of weird. So I can use that third light back there, the room light, to fill the whole room with light. So for this, I'll probably just leave the other lights on. I'll go and turn my third light on and take a test shot. So you can see the difference with and without the room light. With the room light at its current output, it is illuminating everything a little bit, but the room is still pretty dark. So that just tells me, okay, I just need to up that light a little bit more. It's so cool being able to just control all aspects of light in the room from a remote control like this. I used to have to run around manually between every different strobe. Okay, there we go. Now the room is pretty well balanced. If I wanted, I could go for that kind of modern look where the background is completely blown out. So let me just raise that up to 1/4 of full power. Take another shot. Bam, there you go. It's completely blown out. And how long did that take me? It takes me like 1 second to decide I want to blow the background out or I want the background to be dark. And it's just a really powerful tool, especially if you're shooting weddings or events where you just don't have much time. Look, I can just completely blow the background out, dial it up or down. And that is the power of being able to control the light. You are not dependent on good weather. You can adjust to just about any type of room. And it can all happen quickly and reliably, and especially as a pro, you really need it to stay on schedule. So if you are a natural light photographer, please spend a few hours learning to use lighting just so that you have that in your tool belt for when you do need it.